Hey, it's Scott, and I'm testing a bit of a different format here on YouTube, and it's reaction content. I actually reacted to a video that I saw on TikTok, and it got a million views on TikTok, which is and it was an 8 minute video, which was kind of surprising for me. So, one of my friends, after seeing that, hearing my thoughts on that conversation, and seeing how receptive and open people were to it, they sent me this video right here that we are going to go ahead and watch and react to. So, if you're new to the channel, my name is Sid Scott. I am a coach, but mostly what I talk about here on this channel is just general life stuff to help us slow down and focus on what really matters so that we can experience and create a life that needs no escape. So that's kind of the perspective that I'm going to be coming from here. But also, the perspective that I'll be coming from here is that of a black man that, as a biracial man, have a white mom and a black dad. And so that's what informs some of my perspective. What also informs some of my perspective is growing up in a predominantly white space where I had to, or at least felt like I had to when I was younger, reject aspects of my blackness because of it being rejected in the spaces that I was in, starting with the home when I was at my white mom's house versus at my dad's house where everyone was black. So that informs, just some of my perspective. I'm also married, happily married to a black woman as well. So that's just some of my perspective, right? Where it comes from. I think that context is somewhat useful and important. I don't know either of these people on this podcast. I've never seen them before. I don't know much about them at all, their context, their lens, where they're coming from, but I'm going to watch it. We're going to react to it. Let me know what you think. If you like this content, let me know. It seems to be dating and relationships is a very big pain point for a lot of people, but also a big thing that people just like to watch. I mean, Love is Blind is on season number 9. But anyways, I've talked enough. Let's go ahead and get into the video, shall we?
I don't feel like black women are in a position anymore to ignore what men are saying. I don't think they're in a position to ignore male leadership anymore. I personally don't have any skin in the game. But as you know, I'm trying to dedicate my time and my effort to moving forward and being solution orientated in the space. Right? Technically speaking, I don't even date black women, bro. And this is something that black women do not understand.
Pull up on that.
The things that we're not going to tolerate black women leading.
This is the pool you came across.
Hold on.
That's a valid thing to say, and I'm gonna go ahead and shoot it down because this is the mistake women keep making.
Okay. So he says, I don't feel like black women are in the position anymore to ignore what men are saying. I don't even date black women, bro. Okay, so, so right from the start, he's almost like saying something that will go viral, right? It's strong, inflammatory conversation, which is what does well on social media, right? As someone who's been creating content for a while, I've observed it. That's what does well on social media. That's what does well on the algorithms, and you've probably seen that. So that's like the first thought that I have. But I'm also thinking about, he's saying black women need to listen to male leadership, while at the same time admitting and saying that he's removed himself from the community, right? Like he says, black women aren't in a position to ignore what men are saying, or like they're not in a position to ignore male leadership, but he adds like, I don't even date black women. So he's trying to set himself up here as an authority figure over a group of people he admits that he doesn't engage with on that level. This doesn't make you an authority, in my opinion. The frame itself comes from an ego attempts to feel in control, maybe, or like superior. Okay. And the other thing about leadership, which he's talking about male leadership, so I'm going to make an assumption here that he sees himself as at least having insight, if not an expert on leadership, because he's talking about it in that way. I mean, he says they're not in a position to ignore it. So I don't know. I don't know his thoughts on how he sees himself like as a leader, but at the end of the day, leadership never demands to be heard. A good trait of leadership, in my opinion, is people want to listen to you and they choose to listen to you. Now, he says orientated. He's what he means to say is he's oriented towards helping. That's where he's coming from, and that's how we should listen to him moving forward with everything that he has to say. He's not here to be mean. He's not here to be disagreeable or be a bully. He says he's here to help. Okay, but you you can't claim to want to help a community of people that you've emotionally distanced yourself from, or you've like emotionally abandoned. He's talking about black women instead of to them, and he's saying I want to help, but I'm talking about them versus to you, right? As a black woman. So like there's already a big disconnect there between what he says he wants to do and what he's actually doing. He's showing the distance that he's creating, and it's as if he sees himself as above black women while trying to say he wants to help versus alongside arm in arm with black women saying he wants to help. Let's go back. Let's rewatch some of this.
Shoot it down. I don't feel like black women are in a position anymore to ignore what men are saying. I don't think they're in a position to ignore male leadership anymore. I personally don't have any skin in the game. But as you know, I'm trying to dedicate my
Yeah, I don't have any skin in the game. Meaning I'm not emotionally connected. I'm not attached. I'm behind this thing. I'm above this thing, but I'm certainly not next to this thing. So like if that's the position, like how are you even in a position to help?
time and my effort to moving forward and being solution orientated in the space. Right? Right? Technically speaking, I don't even date black women, bro.
Technically speaking, I don't even date black women, bro. I'm just trying to have this conversation to move the conversation forward. Okay. Here's the thing. This is a quiet conversation like worth asking in my opinion. And that's what we're about over here on this channel. Why do so many of us men who say they're done with black women still center them in the conversation? Why even opt in to be a part of this conversation that is going to be about that if you're indifferent to it, if you don't have any skin in the game? Are you doing it for views? It could be that. That's probably a part of it. But what this tells me, wanting to be in this conversation and like being so passionate about this conversation, having so much energy for this conversation and time for this conversation, tells me that this isn't indifference. It's an unresolved attachment that's still there. These guys have all of these grievances about black women because they're grieving something that's lost and they don't even know it, in my opinion. And I think the loss that they're grieving is a sense of home, a sense of belonging, a sense of connectedness, a sense of being known and seen and recognized and validated by black women. Right? This type of talk, it's like, yes, it's misogynistic, of course, but it's not just that conversation that he's having here. It's a mask over pain, in my opinion. Guys like this are just trying to protect themselves from the shame or the hurt that comes with feeling unseen, unwanted, powerless. That's plain as day to me whenever I see these types of conversations, okay? And so they build their identity around being above the women who once symbolized home, And it kind of feels like hatred towards black women, or maybe just like a general disdain or like resentment or even contempt towards black women pointed outward. But what's going on inside is grief and sadness. And then over like a long enough timeline, this grief cements into superiority. I don't date black women becomes a virtue signal. It becomes a new sense of belonging and a rally cry And it's an armor that protects the original hurt of rejection, the original hurt of confusion, the original hurt of unmet expectations around love, identity, respect. These men are hurt men. And I have no problem saying that. I have been a hurt man myself. And I had to really confront that and deal with that because I'll just be honest with you, when I was 19, 20 years old, when a black woman asked me why I'm dating a Filipino girl and not a black girl, my gut response without even thinking about it was, oh, like I don't date black women. Right. And I didn't say that to be cool. And that was like long before podcasts like this was even a thing and going viral on social media for stuff like this was a thing. That was just my real life response because for so long I had to reject aspects of my blackness to get acceptance and approval from my mother and then acceptance and approval from the community that I was being raised in, which was a predominantly white space in rural Wisconsin. So that was just like something that naturally picked up. But in hindsight, you can see that that came from a place of hurt. Blackness was supposed to be home. That's a part of my identity. You see what I'm saying? So so that also that frames like my perspective and where I'm coming from. I can kind of see through it. At least I think I can. Okay. Again, you don't speak on something that you're indifferent to.
And this is something that black women do not
You gotta pull
understand.
up on that.
The things that we're not going to tolerate black women leading.
This is the pool you came across.
Hold on.
That's a valid thing to say, and I'm going to go ahead and shoot it down.
Like so for a lot of guys like this, I believe that black women reflect back to them parts of themselves that they're just not ready to deal with. Those parts of themselves that they're not ready to deal with being powerlessness, being resentment, maybe even failure in a society that emasculates us as black men, honestly. So, a way to kind of regain that sense of power, even if it's unconscious, is through the group that they feel stripped them of that power. And that right there is like a whole conversation in itself. But this is already getting really long, so let's go ahead and get through some more of this. Some more of this video.
Because this is the mistake women keep making. They insist on, and this is all women. This is not black women. This is women in general. This is a female issue. They keep on dodging accountability, dodging the points that are being made, dodging the grievances, dodging the data by constantly trying to deflect to something else, missing the main fucking point, which is that you're not going to get what you want because you're not making the adjustments. Black men are not out here belly aching and crying that they can't get or find women that they want. Getting a Becky. I promise you.
Here's where we kind of start to see the classic pattern for these guys. Women are the problem, men are the solution. And he says women, females are dodging accountability. Accountability to what? I don't know. The data, the grievances, I probably like that's what he was talking about. I'm not really into this conversation about genders, but I've heard echoes of a lot of guys talking about this female accountability thing. To be honest, I'm not really sure what it's about. But here's what I can offer. A lot of the times when men say that, what they mean is you're not responding the way that I want to, the way that I want you to. That's not offering accountability. That's wanting and desiring compliance, which there's no need for that in intimate relationships. There's a need for that in the military, right? There's a need for that in school, maybe in prison, in the prison system, right? Like there's a need for that. That's how the hierarchy works in those places, more or less. But in dating and in relationships, we shouldn't be striving for, as men or women, we should not be striving for compliance. We need connection, not compliance. We need connection, not control. Let me play some of this back.
They're getting a Maria. I promise you they get. I personally don't have any skin in the game, but moving forward, and I'm gonna go ahead and shoot it down because this is the mistake women keep making. They insist on, and this is all women, this is not black women, this is women in general, this is a female issue. They keep on dodging accountability, dodging the points that are being made, dodging the grievances, dodging the data by constantly trying to deflect to something else, missing the main fucking point, which is that you're not going to get what you want because you're not making the adjustments. Black men are not out here belly aching and crying that they can't get or find women that they want.
Yeah, so again, a lot of what he's saying is you're not responding the way I want you to as a black man. You're not responding the way that black men want and need you to respond. Um, and again, you hear him assert that he wants to help, but in my opinion, I feel like you can hear the contempt in his tone, and you can observe the demeaning language that he has towards women, calling them females and saying they're dodging the main effing point. Main effing point. All of that undermines any genuine interest that you may have had in having a conversation, any genuine interest that you claim to have to healing and moving forward. You know? Like, this conversation isn't a conversation about how do we both grow, aka move forward. It's a conversation around, like, why won't you change for me? Why won't you listen to me? Why won't you do what I say? Why won't you bend and contort to the grievances that I have? Why don't you give me what I want, which is framed as the vehicle for you getting what you want as a woman? But again, if you really think about that, you know, this isn't a conversation about trying to help. It's a conversation of trying to help you meet my expectations that I have as a black man of who you should be as a black woman. Again, this is trying to take power back. This is trying to have control. I don't know. I hope if you're watching this is kind of clear. I mean, if it's not, let me know. But to me, this isn't a conversation about trying to heal, grow, move anything forward. And this is kind of like the root of the gender wars right there. It's both sides trying to win instead of trying to connect.
I promise get or find belly aching and crying. Black men are not out here belly aching and crying that they can't get or find women that they want. I promise you that.
And I don't know that this is true. I think there are a lot of men belly aching and crying, not just black men, but men in general, belly aching and crying that they can't get women. That's like a huge thing. And so that's a lot of men. And I think that there's a lot of black men included in that. There's just a very small subset of them that choose to cope with that by going outside of the United States or going outside of their immediate environment where they don't get the recognition that they want. But I think the irony in this clip so far for me is a lot of this is him dodging accountability. He's turning his personal resentment into a full-on cultural critique and commentary. So,
Getting a Becky. I promise you they're getting a Maria. I promise you they're getting a Sue Lang. I've dated Arab women, my guy. You see what I'm trying to say? So the world is wide open for the black man.
They gonna hate you on this,
right?
For this.
No. They can hate me, but I don't give a fuck because it's coming from a good place and I'm trying to help. I just told you I have no skin in the game. I don't need any type of woman, especially a black woman, to agree with me. I don't need you to understand me. I don't need you to follow me. I don't need you to submit to me. I don't need you to do any of that. My passport is well exercised. 20 countries in 2024 alone. And what I found out irrefutably is that I don't have like all these potential options. I actually legitimately have women that I've met their family, I've spoken to their father, and they are prepared, willing, and interested in marrying me. And they're just sitting there waiting in multiple different countries. And it's on me to decide at what level of success am I willing to now go cash out and do that.
okay. So now we're done with the critiquing and criticizing, I guess. And now we're on to the performance part of this podcast. The performance. He's listing countries, passports, marriage proposals, trying to prove that he's not the one losing. Black women are losing. What are they losing? Access to him, access to black men. So they're losing the competition, the contest, they're losing the prize. Is he the prize? Is that the mentality?
Or you keep digging
You,
that
you,
hole,
you see
brother.
what I'm
Can
trying to
I
say?
ask you at least,
But
are some of these places in the motherland?
Africa included,
Okay, so
right?
that's still beautiful black
No,
women.
but no, that's not. Stop it.
That's still you at least.
But for me to decide at what level of success sitting there waiting in multiple different countries. And it's on me to decide at what level of success am I willing to now go cash out and do that.
Before you keep digging.
So he talks about his passports and women ready to marry him. Like, so he has global validation. When you have to keep proving yourself and proving that you moved on, again, proving that you don't have skin in the game and you don't care, right? You probably haven't. You probably care. You're probably very much attached still, right? Like, that's just, at least that's how I see it. And again, this could all be for social media views. This could all be for clout on the internet, to get people talking about it and getting himself attention and garnering more views, right? It could be. But this also could just be like how he really feels and how he really presents in the world. And here's the thing, you can travel all over the world, but if you're still carrying resentment, this is just expensive coping that looks good on the internet, but it's still avoidance. What he's really saying here is I feel and I have, proof that I'm so much more desired somewhere else. And that's real. That's a real emotion. I can't argue with his experience of, that being the case, but ultimately instead of processing that, he weaponizes it against black women. He tries to turn that into leverage for his argument as to why black women need to listen to him and his leadership. But in my opinion, this isn't the posture of a man who's at peace with his stance. And another thing, a lot of us do this too in quieter ways. We measure how much we've healed or how much we've grown by how wanted we are, as opposed to how well are we able to give and maintain love and connection. That's something to think about. And peace has very little to do with how many options you have, in my opinion, but it has to do with like how regulated you are. Again, that's just my opinion.
I'll go at what country, and they're just sitting in their family. I don't have like, is that I don't have like all these potential options. I actually legitimately have women that I've met their family, I've spoken to their father, and they are prepared, willing, and interested in marrying me. And they're just sitting there waiting in multiple different countries. And it's on me to decide at what level of success am I willing to now go cash out and do that.
Before you keep digging.
You know, I think another thing that's like an opportunity for breakthrough and insight here is how much energy is being spent performing and proving that you don't need someone, instead of holding up the mirror and asking why it still hurts that you do. If you catch yourself listing this performance of receipts that justify and prove how much you've grown and how much you don't need somebody, maybe slow down and ask yourself the question, why does it still hurt me that I do?
You see what I'm trying to say?
Ask you at least,
But
are some of these places in the motherland?
Africa included.
Okay, so
Right?
that's still beautiful black
No,
women.
but no, that's not. Stop it. Because when I say black, I'm specifically talking about American women of color. Because outside of America, they're not black women, bro. If they live in Kenya, they're Kenyan. They live in Uganda, they're Ugandan. You get what I'm trying to say? If they live in South Africa, they're South African. If they live in Dominican Republic, they're Dominican. We're the only ones stuck in that ignorance. So the way that black women are behaving is not hurting black men. I understand that they're hurt. I understand that they're
Okay, okay, this part's important. This is him. You can see this is him trying to escape the weight of identity. He's not just leaving black women. He's leaving the mirror that reminds him of who he is himself. He's trying to say that the idea of race, the ignorance of race, exists only in the United States, and that black women who live abroad aren't black. They're just their national identities, and this is something that is just objectively false, and that is not how race works. I don't think you get to travel outside the legacy of blackness. You just move into different contexts for it. But the idea that race disappears outside of America is false. Like, you know, I think it's complete fantasy that if you to believe that if you change environments, you escape race. And I think this almost kind of feels like, again, someone who's trying to outrun or at least run away from their own identity and their own reflection. And he is finding new places to hide from it.
Present. I'm specifically talking about American women of color, because outside of America, they're not black women, bro. If they live in Kenya, they're Kenyan. They live in Uganda, they're Ugandan. You get what I'm
And this is what makes this conversation kind of tricky for me. This sounds like dating debates and dating dialogue, if in conversation. But underneath this is like an ancestral thing that a lot of us carry. And it's the tension of being black and maybe wanting some relief from what that means and how that feels. And that fatigue, I think, is real. But I think the danger here is when that fatigue turns into a fundamental disdain towards the race as a whole. And that, what I'm saying right there, I don't think is unique to men or this man in this video, but I see that playing out on both sides.
trying to say. If they live in South Africa, they're South African. If they live in Dominican Republic, they're Dominican. We're the only ones stuck in that ignorance. So the way that black women are behaving is not hurting black men. I understand that they're hurt. I understand that they're resentful. I understand they have all these unhealed wounds and all these childhood traumas and all this shit that they're dealing with black men, which is why they have this force field and they have this us versus them mentality. The point that I'm making is that it's them that's losing.
Okay.
That's unhealed wounds and all these childhood traumas and all this shit that they're dealing with black men, which is why they have this force field and they have this.
This is the moment for me. This is like the moment of clarity where, excuse me, he acknowledges that black women are hurting, but only these balloons. He acknowledges that black women are losing, but only to declare. He acknowledges that black women are hurting, but he only does so to declare or make a point that they're losing. And I mean, these are his words. So this is wild. He's recognizing the pain, but he's not honoring it. He's trying to use it to prove his points. That is not compassion. That is not trying to move anybody forward. And he's pretending to be concerned this whole time, saying he's orientated himself towards solutions. But like this whole time, he's being kind of condescending. And this isn't empathy, and this isn't how you bring about solutions. Again, like what I'm hearing underneath all of this is grief or, frustration. And really, I think a lot of black men just ultimately feel unseen or rejected. And that's who's losing if we're talking about losing. And when you don't deal with that grief, it turns into resentment. It turns into contempt. And that's where you kind of see a lot of these guys that get that podcast mic and that camera in front of them and they kind of just start seething, you know? And that all of that unresolved grief and internalized rejection, it comes across in the essence of how you communicate when talking about the subject of black women and dating. And again, this is a talking at and a talking about as opposed to talking to and talking with, and there's a big difference. Now we have the framing of the trauma that black women experience as the obstacle to his convenience, right? And black men's convenience as opposed to a social condition and reality that's worth empathizing with. And to me, this reveals like a very significant level of emotional immaturity while trying to position himself as logical and someone who can bring forward solutions. And to be honest, I can't see for where I'm sitting, there's no capacity or ability to offer any type of legitimate solution here. His solution is listen to me. That to me is not a solution. I don't think, just based on this little clip here, I don't think he's worth listening to as it relates to black women and dating at all. Not even in the slightest. Not even remotely. It's my opinion.
Us versus them, and they have this all the unhealed wounds and all. I understand they have all these unhealed wounds and all these childhood traumas and all this shit that they're dealing with black men, which is why they have this force field and they have this us versus them mentality. The point that I'm making is that it's them that's losing.
And all of this shows how pain,
It's mentality.
like, it just gets recycled. It just gets recycled. When these guys feel powerless and unseen, it seems like a lot of them, the only way they know how to cope with that is to flip the dynamic to try and make somebody else feel smaller. And I think that's something that we as men do, to just black men, white man, whatever. That's something that we tend to do. That's what I'm hearing here. But imagine if he said this instead. Imagine if he said, I understand that they're hurt and I am also hurt as a black man. And that right there is a conversation that we could build from. That's a conversation that we could move from. But we can't really heal what we keep turning into content. Yeah. At this point, for me, it's not even about what he said, but I think what it reveals within all of us inside of this conversation. Like if you strip away gender, race, ego, structures, hierarchies, dynamics, what's left is a human being that's trying to protect themselves from disappointment. And I think a lot of these gender conversations in dating boil down to the disappointment that we don't know how to sit with. A lot of black men feel like they're overlooked or misunderstood, and that gets validated when they go overseas to another country. And a lot of black women feel they've been overextended and underprotected, which is objectively true. The guys are right in, to have their feeling and their experience if that's the case. But both black men and black women, there's trauma and there's hurting, and the conversation isn't about both of us acknowledging to each other that we are hurt by each other and within each other. And so when I hear him say in his video, like, black women are losing, what I really hear underneath that is, I'm tired of losing and I don't know how else to say it. And so I've moved on. That's what he says. I've moved on from this. I'm above this now. But I really think that's just coping, you know? And I don't think this is, I don't think this is evil. I don't think this is hate. I think this is just unresolved things, and that we all have as humans. Again, not here to drag anybody. I am here because I think that we all deserve a little bit more deeper conversation than the ones that we've been having, or at least if not deeper necessarily, but more honest. I think more honest conversations than the ones that we're having. Every time one of these clips gets traction and starts to go viral, it's easy to take sides and say that's why I don't mess with them. I saw that in my viral video that I had this week. But what if we stopped playing defense, and what if we all just started being a bit more curious? And I know that's easier said than done, but that's what's needed. And if we're more curious, that's coming from a more regulated nervous system. If we're more curious, if we're open to connection, compassion through curiosity, that's where nervous system regulation happens, and that's where healing conversations can happen. What if instead of asking who's right, we asked what's real and what's actually underneath all of this frustration? Because when I look at both of us, black men, black women, I see the same pattern, and it's us trying to feel safe in a world that has shown us love is a liability and vulnerability is weakness that'll get you killed. And until we start creating safety with each other, we'll just keep turning our pain into content that gets a bunch of views and just reinforces the cycle. So I don't think this clip is about leadership, I think it's about grief. I think it's about projection. I think that this is someone under the illusion that, being dominant and successful with women can protect you from loneliness. It can't. I'll be the first to admit that. It can't. Now, I'm not here to pick a side. I'm here to, remind us that we're on the same side. At the end of the day, nobody's winning this war. We're if anything, we're all losing by participating and continuing rhetoric like he's putting out there. I think he's built a worldview that makes his hurt, feel righteous. But if you have to devalue anybody to feel powerful, you're not healed, and you're not in space to lead anybody or anything. You're just louder. Anyways, if you made it this far, here's what I hope you sit with. I'm not trying to get you to necessarily agree with me. I'm just hoping that you see content like this and you ask better questions, and you probably do that. But here's some questions that I want to ask you to sit with. Where have you mistaken control for care? That's question number one. Question number two, what does safety look like in your relationships? What do you need it to look like? What would you like it to look like? And how can we lead from a place of curiosity versus always criticizing? That's how we actually move forward, not through louder takes, but through asking these questions and sitting with the quieter, uncomfortable, more vulnerable truths. All right. This video is way longer than I thought it would be. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Drop a comment again if you like this type of conversation, if you like this type of reaction content from me. Let me know, and I'll see you in another video.